Welcome to the Los Angeles Asian Pacific Film Festival presented by Visual Communications. My name is Francis Collado, and I'm your Executive Director of Visual Communications. I'm coming from you from Little Tokyo, and we acknowledge the Tongva people, the stewards of this land before we all came to live here. Thank you for creating community with us at the Los Angeles Asian Pacific Film Festival, and thank you to our supporters, especially our partners, for your valuable work. Thank you to Nielsen for presenting our C3 Converts Artist Conversations, and today we center around our Pacific Cinewaves spotlight. Pacific Cinewaves is a visual communications commitment in amplifying stories by and about Native Hawaiians, Pacific Islanders, and Indigenous peoples. It is also an acknowledgement that we need to do better in supporting and developing these artists and their stories, especially as a festival, being an Asian Pacific film festival, we don't have currently parity in programming. And so our work continues. I'd also like to recognize our partners who do the work in developing and supporting these artists. Thank you to our friends at Pacific Islanders and Communications, and also a shout out to the Academy of Creative Media at UH, Creative Lab Hawaii, OEV TV, the Sundance Institute's Indigenous programs, Ohina, and our friends at HIF. During this festival, we celebrate these artists and their stories, and for the past few years, meeting our Pacific Cinewaves artists has been a highlight for us. We look forward to having you with us in person again in the future. Folks, I'd like to introduce you to our hosts. Please welcome Mickey Davis and Kiki Rivera.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here, everyone.
Yes, and we're so honored to be in the presence of all of you. There are some familiar faces, some really big powerhouses. They're all really brilliant, and I'm excited to talk about your work and dig a little deeper in. But, just given the times that we're in, I just feel like we should just get that out of the way and talk about, what it's like from, when you first shot these films, and now we've made this transition into this COVID era. And so I was just wondering if there are any, kind of takeaways from the time that you've produced to the time now. So we're going to kind of go round robin again, just to give everybody another time to just speak a little, but if you could also kind of introduce your films. So Bex, could you start us off?
Sure, kia ora, thank you. So I first started writing Hinekura in 2017, and I wrote the first little part. So it's a story that I've been thinking about for a long time, since I was a teenager, and I found out that we had some similar traditions with our First Nations whānau peoples around our menstrual cycle, and I wondered why we no longer had anything like that anymore. So it was something that had always been kind of there, and I've got daughters, and when they got their first ikura, I just kind of had to create something. But luckily for us over here, we've got these amazing people who have done a lot of research. They've even done their PhDs on our ancient practices. And so it was for me, it's a huge, big subject to delve into, because it's sacred, it's ancient, but it's also, you're bringing through these ancient practices and bringing them back in, and you're subject to, other tribes kind of going, that's not what we think it is. But, so at some point, you have to just sort of stand in your own truth and in your own power, and know that you've done as much research and you've talked to as many people that you can to be able to feel safe and okay about moving forward in that. And then Hinekura itself, the film, so it took me probably about 6 months to really get all the story out. And then when I made it, it was actually quite a big production. Like, it's quite an epic big film. We had to try and find landscapes in Aotearoa, New Zealand, that is not colonised, which there's not very many anymore. And I felt overwhelmed, to be honest. And I felt, because I'm a relatively new filmmaker, I've been doing film for years, but as costume department and stuff like that. And probably my biggest takeaway is, in hindsight, I know that my vision and what I took into the edit suite, and not getting everything that I needed in the shoot, was because of my, me not feeling empowered or powerful enough, or in my power to be able to actually stand up and say what I needed at the right times. When I did have to, I had to. And so my takeaway is, just trust yourself and trust your vision, trust your intuition. Like, you are the one with the vision. You know exactly what it is that you want to make. No one knows the story in the world and the people as much as you do. So yeah, just effort, go for it.
Thank you so much, Bex. And I'm like, you know, also shocked to know that that's like a first time for you, because it's striking. It's like, it's a beautiful piece. And thank you for sharing that and shining that message to us all. Kimmy, we're gonna go to you next. If you could introduce your film and talk about, you know, major takeaways in this kind of like shift where we're changing from one world, or evolving from one world to the next in COVID times. Your production.
Hi, I'm Kimi Haoli, and my film is Kama Aina, which translates to Child of the Land. And it's exciting to see a few people that I know here, Erin, Alika, Dean. It's just such a fun panel. And I'm calling in from Los Angeles. But I guess, you know, my biggest takeaway, that this film has been something that was percolating forever for me, and I had done a ton of research and had basically gone back and forth to Hawaii from Los Angeles for a few years researching this project, and just never quite felt like I was ready to delve in, or like I had all my ducks in a row, or, you know, just, I think it was like fear and sort of insecurity, but also wanting to feel like I had done adequate research and was really, you know, telling the story in the most accurate and truthful way that I could. And I guess my biggest takeaway is that I'm really happy that I sort of had that push to make the film when I did, because it's something that I think is even more pertinent now, obviously, with what we're going through, but it's also a film that I do not think you really could shoot right now, obviously, with lockdowns and all of the protocols. So I guess my advice is, like, you don't have to see the full net before you leap. You know, I think it's good to see little elements of it, but I'm really glad that, you know, I was able to make the film last summer, and, you know, I think that hopefully it's an inspiring story.
We are too. Yes, we're glad you were able to do that too. Now we're going to pass the mic to Kamahaina and Dean.
Hi, everyone. This film, Kapai Mahu, really started 10 years ago when my partner, Joe Wilson, and I were making a documentary about Kumuhina, called Kumuhina. And we were filming down in Waikiki, and she said, "You know what these stones are?" We said, "No." It took a couple of years to really find out about the story, because it had been pretty well suppressed and hidden, but eventually we realized they hold the spirits of these four healers who were Mahu, and who used their Mahuness as part of their healing power. One of the stories we heard was that the healers came over from Tahiti or Kahiki during a time of great sickness in Hawaii, and that they were so revered because they helped cure the people. And when we were making the film, we had no idea that this would have any relevance to the present day. So it was kind of amazing that the film came out just as the pandemic was hitting us. And we realized that there's really a lesson from the film, which is that we need to respect everybody for what they bring to our healing and for what powers they can bring, and not worry about identity so much, and realize that people hundreds or thousands of years ago in Polynesia had a way of looking at human life, and a way of looking at human health and well-being that looked at the whole person, and that's important today. So that's how we went. But the film was really directed by Hina, so I'm sure she'll want to tell you more about it.
Mahalo, Dean. As Kanaka Maoli, living in my homeland, living in my mainland, I feel it's absolutely important to bring the kinds of stories that are not just stories, but actual history, and help to bring them to life. I think that the presentation of Kapai Mahu couldn't be more timely, because it's talking about these four legendary individuals whom, through the duality of their nature, they bring healing to our world. But hopefully this story will serve as an understanding that part of the healing that our world needs is to bridge the divide between people's perspectives, people's sentiments, and all of the things that put an ocean in between us. you know, and for all of us who are Pacific people here on this gathering today, we understand what it means to be separated by distance, but yet so close because we are still connected by genealogy. So again, thank you for this honor of having us here, and I hope that the rendering of Kapai Mahu helps people to really see that it's not that far across the ocean when it comes to diversity and our ability to contribute to the greater society.
Anyway, thank you.
Mahalo.
Jeremiah, I'm going to pass it to you next.
Right, I hope I make some sense and sound a little bit intelligent. There's a lot of big filmmakers here that I really admire. So I don't know, man. I made Lalil because I'd only really heard one side of history being told and being taught at school, and I've kind of been a little bit pissed off at that for a while. So I kind of felt like we just needed to be really responsible for how we're portrayed on screen, and nobody's really going to do it honestly, except for ourselves. So yeah, I've always believed in our stories and our history, and I feel like our stories will never lose their worth. It's just us as a people and filmmakers that have to really back ourselves. And even when we're going through the wars with funders, and you know, when you go through your little doubts as maybe not being good enough or worthy enough or whatever, you know, we kind of owe it to you know, like our kids and stuff and grandchildren and blah 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 down the line to at least have a go. And I'm just a big believer in getting up every time you get knocked down. And yeah, that's me trying to sound intelligent, and hopefully I've answered the question. I just fully back my culture, you know. Like I know that I don't always get things right, but I back my Samoa in this case, or I back Indigenous knowledge. So yeah, I kind of have. I'm not really scared of failure. I just go for it, you know. And on set, that just means not settling for performances maybe that I know could be better. I just can't leave that set without getting something that I'm really proud of, and hopefully the cast and crew are really proud of as well. So, and I don't even know if I answered the question, but yeah.
You did a wonderful job, Jeremiah. And just speaking about like holding your ground and coming from your perspective. And I was going to say, you made me think that everybody here today, every film is just so unique and different. I feel like it's like, I'm going to say a prison, but I keep imagining a disco ball and everybody's a slide of glass, you know, like emanating. So talk about not making any sense, but still, I just see all of your work is illustrative of this like wonderful oceanic community. And so, no, that was great. Anela, I want to hand it to you.
Yeah, I guess my film is kind of like a different take on my idea of my culture, because it's very much a very personal story, like mostly to myself, but I also wanted to tap into a lot of ideas about memory and, you know, preservation of your culture in a way that might only have to do with this family or something like that. So that was one part of it. But the other part of it is mostly the story about grief and mourning, and the different ways in which we try to come to terms with coping, I guess, like especially with people who are very young, because of course it's a topic that a lot of people don't like to touch on, like because it's very uncomfortable. So it's just trying to see that through like a young lens and like the things that they'll do. I guess in terms of with the change and the timing, I feel like I was very, very, very lucky and very unlucky, because this was very much like my first film that I got to like actually put out there. And I was super lucky to have gotten it made last summer with like a really strong team. And I got to go through Okina Labs 2 years before that. And then this year was going to be like, you know, the distribution year, that kind of festival run. So I haven't really been able to go to any festivals or really meet up with people and be on panels, which I'm really bummed out about, because it was something like this that I really would have loved, like one-on-one conversations with the other filmmakers and all those things. So I guess it is kind of a big change. So, and I can't even guess how things will look in the future, but it's nice that films are still being made in what ways they can and being shared.
Thank you, Anna. No, it's great. And I hope that, you know, we can, even if it's in this forum, you know, just connect through this. You know, one thing is like sometimes filmmakers are not able to make the trips, you know, to the festivals. And so this is also kind of great because we get to meet in the space. So it's like, I'm looking at kind of taking that as a positive, try to take that as a positive, but we'll get you in the real space soon. Alika, I'm going to pass it to you next.
First of all, I just want to say, like, it's surreal to be on this panel because I've had the privilege to be influenced by basically every film that I've seen here thus far, like going back from Maudilan in Aotearoa last year to Imaginative in Toronto, to the other films that I've been able to see online, and finally seeing Kapai Mahu, which was, I mean, absolutely amazing. I'm really like, I don't know, like all of the influences have amalgamated into this panel, so it's really cool to be a part of it. Just beyond that, the shift for me is like, Molokai Iban was the most stripped down film I ever did. It's one location with 3 actors. We did it in 6 hours just because we only had that much time. But that sort of has now really informed the way that I want to work. And especially, it's the most sort of naturalized process for this situation we find ourselves in. So as we're trying to sort of adapt this short into a feature, we're actually we're just trying to figure out logistically, like, how can we make this movie with the least amount of people possible in the safest way possible. And so in a strange way, this short really has informed sort of everything that I've been thinking about now in terms of how to make a film in this current environment.
That's fascinating. Thank you, Alika. And we're really, really honored to have you here too. And there's so much that we learned too. A little note, I got to like share Alika's film, Makati Makai, to my students too. So it's like, all these films I show to our, you know, future generations. So you have a lot of value. Jelena, is it Jelena? I want to pass it to you next.
Thank you. My film, Standing Above the Clouds, it follows 3 of the many families that stand to protect Mauna Kea from the building of the 30-meter telescope. And I think being on the Mauna last summer with Alika and Kiara and Aaron, and I'm sure other people were there too, but really getting to hang out, it was such a beautiful experience. And thinking about, you know, how that has informed this time, I felt like on the Mauna, it really taught me how to feel about living through history, of, you know, being in a time in the moment where you know you're going to tell your kids about this, or your nieces and nephews, or, you know, whoever in the future, like, you know, it's going to be written about in history books. And I feel kind of similarly to what we're living through right now with COVID and with, you know, all of the change that we're seeing and all of the awakening that we're seeing. So I think it was really great preparation in that way, but also, I don't know if anyone else has this experience, but sometimes when I watch films or TV or even my own film, I'll see all these people hugging or really close to each other, and I'm kind of like, oh, where's everyone's mask? Like, what's going on? So there's a little bit of that too. Like, I miss, you know, being around so many people and just having that ease around big groups as well. But it's nice that we got a little glimpse of that and can always return to it through the film. And echoing what Alika said, I think it also taught us to be really, really resourceful and to have a really small crew. some of the shots and that are in the film, it was just like me in Auntie Pua's van with her, like all scrunched up in the corner, filming what she was saying, just coming off from, you know, giving a big speech or doing something big. So I think it has really informed our filmmaking practice as well. But we're really honored to be included with such an incredible lineup, and really grateful that you all have put all the work and energy into making this virtual space accessible. So thank you so much.
Mahalo nui to you as well. And yes, this totally didn't go unnoticed when Kiki and I were watching the films again in full. It's like you just feel like there's this constellation of relationships that's like in orbit. And so we, you know, we're astounded by that. I think it's a really beautiful thing to witness one from the next, and how all your lives are intertwined. And that's just the way it works, right? We all rise together. Nick, can we pass the mic to you next?
Absolutely, yeah. Wow, great. What an amazing group of people. So yeah, I'm with the film Tā Moko. I, at the time, was working for an organization, a charity, who were journeying into making a haerenga journey into Tau Māori, with the employees learning te reo Māori and tikanga, and some people really kind of spearheading that and shaking us up a bit. And we had formed a relationship with an artist in the north of the North Island in New Zealand, an area called Hokianga, and by the name of Bernard Makware, and we heard that he was getting his moko matora, his full face Māori tattoo done in a couple of months' time, and they invited us to come and document that, which was obviously a huge honour. So myself and the other director took a couple of cameras up. We went up a week early and interviewed him, and he insisted. I was like, I kind of took kind of control, not control, but kind of ownership of the story, or so I thought. And I thought that Bernard was going to be kind of the main character, and then Bernard started talking about his niece and wanting to get his niece as kind of the equal main character, and I was like, oh no, this isn't how a story should go, you know. So the whole thing was me learning. Usually when I make a film, I decide what I want to make, and this was really a journey in learning to just capture what's there, because what was there was amazing. And if any, I don't know how many of you have seen the film, but his niece Sapphire is really, in the end, represented the real heart of the film, and the way she spoke was some of the most touching bits that still touch me when I watch it. So yeah, we spent a weekend up on the marae in the Hokianga for this mokopapa ceremony, which is a weekend-long ceremony involving a lot of kōrero and kairangatira, a lot of food, a lot of, you know, whanaungatanga, a lot of togetherness, and really I felt like an outsider. I felt I don't identify as Māori. There were all these things going on, but the wairua, the kind of spirit in the room was just so tangible and touching and overwhelming. And so when I kind of had the hard drive plonked on my desk on Monday and asked to edit it, I just thought, if I can just capture even half of what it felt like to be on that marae for that weekend, then I'll be happy. That'll be my job done. And yeah, really, really proud of what we ended up with.
And you should be. It was a job well done. I just was emoting, you know, or cleansing. A lot of tears came out. So I just felt like it was that exchange was really happening. It really affected me coming across.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
On that note, Erin, I want to pass it to you next.
It's a very intimidating panel, but I will do my best, and I apologize if my answer feels very doesn't feel tangible, but I'll start from in the making of The Moon of the Night. I've been around a lot of political filmmaking, and I think the thing that concerns me is when we talk about movements, social structures, political agendas, we often forget what that looks like on the micro level, in that those things, those structures affect the people we become. It affects our relationships. It affects the choices we have to make. And
a lot of the work, especially The Moon and the Night, has been in focusing on that. And I, particularly for that film, it's been my most personal film to date and is very close to my heart. It's been a couple of years since it was manifested, but I would say the biggest takeaway since that time, the journey I've been walking, is that film was very much born from a place of trauma and frustration as well. And I am in a place of asking myself, I think it's very important to talk about suffering and trauma in our communities, but how do we also elevate and take it to a place of healing and be careful and responsible in that navigation and journey? And so I think with COVID and everything that's been happening, I've used it more as a sign for me to pause and process a lot of those questions in myself and in the work I'm doing, because I want, when hopefully we get through this, or I don't know how much time that's going to be, but I want to use this time to maybe ask those questions, unlearn things in myself that I find problematic, so that the work I make afterwards is closer to elevating us to a good place. So yeah, it's a bit of a nebulous answer, but that's where I'm at.
No, it's strong. It's wise. All of you are throwing out like major wisdom, and you're very humble about it. No, it's all very wise and powerful. Thank you, Erin. Ciara, I want to pass the mic to you.
Hi, aloha. This Is the Way We Rise was, you know, when we started out on working on the film, I thought we were gonna, you know, learn more about our subject and her creative process, and we'd just be filming at her house and her school down the street from where I live. And last summer was a transformation, not only for Jamaica, our subject, but also for our community. And what I took away from last summer was, you know, just the opportunity to really see a tipping point that we as Native people, like, you know, collectively we have voice, you know, and that collective voice is something that influences us as individuals and beyond. And to see that happen, you know, I saw evidence of it historically with the anniversary of the overthrow in the 90s. And that was, you know, that was an incredible moment. But to be able to witness what Mauna Kea has said for our community on a larger scale, like, I still kind of like, I still kind of shake thinking about it. So and just also the process, like there was a lot of like community support, a lot of kako'o. So like to know that that was the ethos with how things operated, right? Like to have the support of Jelena and the women making Standing Above the Clouds, or like Mikey Noe and a lot of, you know, other filmmakers, seeing Erin there, seeing Alika there, like to see our community out there, you know, it was beautiful. And so, you know, and a lot of the conversation pieces, you know, policing, structures, systems, like what should we challenge and what shouldn't we? I think we're talking about how this ties into the moment in history that we're in now. I mean, I think the reclamation of our community voice should continue and will continue. And I think, not to get too soapboxy, but this is the moment, right? When things are heightened in this way, like I think this COVID era conversation just pushes the idea that we should be intolerant of the systems that put us into these boxes, and that we have to challenge them and, you know, find our way. So, and I mahalo, you know, Jamaica Osorio for the opportunity to like learn from her and like learn her words. I don't have her words. And so hopefully other people can like take away her clarity of voice. You don't have to agree with it, but like to just learn from what she says, because she's got great words, man. So thank you.
Yes, our artists are very important in shaping the world. And Thea, I'd like to pass it to you now.
Hi, gosh, this is a really full-on panel, isn't it? Well, I guess my film, we actually shot it in 2016. it was me and Jerry. We were in Samoa. Jerry was getting his chief title, and Toa was living 3 houses down from where we were staying, and there was kind of like a buzz that this was happening with Toa. And at first, we actually thought that it would be like a small sort of news story. But I think, you know, as we kind of found out what was happening with her and the extent of it, and also how it kind of rippled throughout the whole of Samoa, you know, the BBC were on it, all the local TV stations. It kind of, I think after the shoot, the first initial shoot that we had with her, which was the interview, it just felt like it needed to have more space around it, and for us to respect her story more and make it into a film. And she's a wonderful person, and she's got such a much bigger story. And I got development funding to make a feature, but of course, because of COVID, we haven't been able to get back to Samoa. We were there earlier this year to kind of work out a plan, and we were supposed to go back in a couple of months, but it's still, I think it's kind of a film that is going to take years and years to kind of develop fully, because, you know, it's not just her with things are happening with, it's her father and mother and extended family, and also looking at kind of socially what's the effects of the event as well. And it's still occurring, you know, every Easter it happens, and it happens quite frequently. And I know both Jerry and I have had quite close contact with her, because we've always had this goal with her that we would tell her story. But yeah, it's just a waiting game. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with Toa, and hopefully we get to go back to Samoa when the borders open. So yeah.
We hope so too. And congratulations, Jeremiah, on that's really big news too. But yes, we hope that you guys can go back and, you know, expand on that story and tell. And, you know, last year, I remember you talking about this at last year's festival. So I was like, so happy to see it come to life. We are just looking at the time, and we had several questions. Kiki, which is the one we're gonna have next?
Oh God, we have so many questions, and I think
I know we have so many questions.
Maybe, okay, we can do this. We can do this. This next question is for Jeremiah and Anela and Erin. This is a technology question. So technology and lighting abilities and shooting the elements are in so many of these stories, and so many of these stories it's celebrating the elements. And from a director standpoint, perhaps these worlds might be colliding in a way that is not so convenient. So maybe you can talk about that a little bit. Jeremiah, let's start with you. And I follow, Nairi, and so I know it was pouring rain when you guys were filming. So yeah, if you could just talk about the elements and battling it, or working through.
I kind of knew from the get-go, just because of the story that it is, that I didn't want to shoot it and show the kind of postcard images of Samoa. But what we didn't plan for is that we had, you know, obviously because I live in Aotearoa, couldn't go over there and didn't know the space really well. So I had people looking for locations, and we found this perfect spot where there was a traditional fale. But when we got there at the time, because it's so high up in the mountains, the clouds and the mist and everything just sort of hangs around for a long time. And initially I was like, oh man, like I can't see any depth. All the moisture's getting all over the gear and stuff. And I was like, man, but it ended up looking really good, you know, and it sort of suited the subject matter. So we just rolled with it, and there was some beautiful, just the moisture and the mist just kept on coming through and sweeping through different frames at different times. So it was a real blessing being up there. And, you know, initially I thought we were going to have problems, but I think it looked all right. We'd probably say that we planned all that stuff and it was lit well and it was because of my direction, but we were just fortunate that we were in such a great spot and just kind of rolled with it. Yeah, just grateful that it happened.
Yeah, it was beautiful. I loved it. Thank you. Anela.
I guess so in retrospect, I don't know what I was thinking. Like 90% of my movie takes place at night in like public parks, outside with children. And so there was a lot of obstacles nature-wise because we also shot during summer. So there were long days and we had to wait for the sun to go down, which didn't happen until like 7. And then the parks closed at like 10 or 11. So we'd have like maybe 3 hours to shoot every day. And then they're kids, so we only could have them for a few hours on set. Luckily, we never got rained out, thankfully. I guess our biggest obstacle tech-wise would be the lighting and timing, because especially in the party scene, that was extremely difficult timing-wise, and we lost light kind of like that, and we had like a shot, and before we knew it, the sun went down, and we didn't have enough lights to light up the whole field. So, you know, we had every problem you can name, but I guess me and my DP, we planned everything kind of to the T as best as we could, and timing wise, we just like had to bang it out, and I think it worked out at the end of the day. And I mean, there's a lot that we had to lose look wise, but you know, we got our story in and the actors did a phenomenal job. And yeah, so the elements were an obstacle, but I think like the problem solving that my team did was like amazing. So, you know, it worked out.
Thank you. One of the questions that we also had was, how did you get the mo'o to behave?
Oh my gosh.
What was
So that was probably the hardest part of the film, actually. So after we wrapped shooting, I think I spent like 10 weeks, that's an exaggeration, several weeks trying to figure out how we're going to do that, like get an actual like gecko for the scene. So by this point, everyone had gone their separate ways. So it was kind of me and my VFX guy, Mitchell Viernes, super talented, amazing guy. He ended up catching one for me, and I guess he lives on the side of the island where the mole are I guess a lot chiller than the ones on my side of the island. So he would just put them on the green screen table and they would just kind of sit there and like chill. And he just shot it. We just shot it like with a blue screen draped over a table, and they just sat there, and I was amazing. Like my job was just to help them catch them if they ran off the table, but they never did. So, but the hardest part was just getting a lizard in the first place. Yeah.
That's great. Mahalo. Erin.
I think for me, with my films, I'm like more and more trying to kind of change my point of view and how I make films, and that obviously, let me just put a disclaimer. I did have the luxury of a little bit of a flexible shooting schedule, so I don't want to make it sound like sunshine and flowers, but it was important to me and communicated to my team that I don't want to work in conflict with the elements. I want to work with the elements. If the divine elements decide it's going to rain, we're going to go. Like, if it's going to be sun, we're going to go. And we are going to move with it and just be an ebb and flow relationship with the space. And so there are scenes like that were never planned to be in rain, but anybody who's been in Hawaii knows it rains like every 30 minutes, especially on the east side. But I actually found it to be a blessing in that the scenes where it did rain were the scenes where it needed that. It only elevated those moments, and it almost felt more like I for maybe on some level cheesy, that this willingness to work with the space kind of allowed, I don't know, gave us so much back for that willingness. And that instead of canceling because there's rain, we said, no, we're good. This is a gift and we're going to move with it. And it just elevated what is actually my favorite scene in the film. And it was, even in the planning stages, I had hoped that things would manifest in a way where what the character was feeling would be externalized by the elements. Like when the waves crash, that's the turmoil in her. When the cloud shift over the moon, that's her not having clarity, and like that we are just an extension of those things and that we are connected to those things. So I think I'm trying more and more with my work to change my point of view and how I take that in and try to work beside it. If I don't know, like, yeah, that's my answer.
Yeah, I see that. Thank you for that. Jelena.
Oh, I was just messaging Erin privately that it reminded me of when I asked her on the mountain. I was like, do you have any tips for the mist and filming and what to do? And she was like, either wipe it off, or if it's raining too much, put your rain jacket over the camera. So we also, learned to be really flexible. Obviously, we want to make sure the camera's okay, and it would get really cold too. So there are some issues around like the gear getting really cold or really hot, because everyone who's been to the mountain knows you can have every single climate, every single weather within the span of 1 hour or one aha. So we definitely experienced that. And by my second or third week up there, I had my fully waterproof outfit down. Like every single piece was waterproof. So that was really helpful too. But we just went with the elements as well. And I think it added a lot, just like what Erin was saying.
Mm-hmm. Mahalo. That was also very beautiful. I remember that from the first Pacific Cinewaves I did, and talking to Auntie Pua. So thank you so much. All right. I have a question, and this is out of the blue. This is a improv question because it also made me think of research. And this one is for Kumuhina and Dean. First off, I have to say that I loved the way the story was told, and it reminded me of just bringing back the magic of storytelling. And I was wondering if you could share a little bit about the research behind that mo'olelo. Just as a writer myself, I always wonder about research. So I was wondering if you can also talk about that.
I can tell you a little bit about the sort of library research, which I spent a lot of time on. And I know Hina can tell you about the storytelling aspect, because that was really her brilliant idea to tell it ni how. But when we started this project and we looked at the plaque on the stones, which are in Waikiki right now, passed by almost 10 million people a year, they just talked about healing and not really about the mahu part of the name. And we actually ended up doing a lot of library research and finally finding the very first written record of the story in a little box in the library at UH, in the archives of this guy Thrum, who did a lot of collecting of Hawaiian stories, basically. And that was really an amazing finding, to see something actually handwritten from 150 years ago, and really exciting. And that's what sort of told us that what's interesting about this memorial is, we have now a lot of talk and conversation, quite rightly, about memorials that were built to guys that turn out to be not very good, slave owners, colonialists, all types of bad things. And yet their history has always been out there. And here right in Waikiki, we have a memorial to something really amazing and wonderful. These amazing healers with these great skills. And yet the history has been hidden. So that really made the research, I think, feel very sort of relevant to us.
Mahalo.
Mahalo, Dean. For me, my my thinking and my perspective as far as telling this story and anything that I engage in. Much of it comes from my upbringing. I was raised by my grandparents on both sides of my family. And this influences how I see my world now and how I see my future. Culturally, I was given an opportunity that many Hawaiians weren't, and that is to learn to speak our language from my extended family from the island of Niihau. As many of you will know, especially for our Kanaka Maoli, that for any language, culture, and history that we do have, we're very fortunate to have that. And I know I'm fortunate to have been around till today, the remaining people of the island of Niihau. And so that combined with my political perspective, Hawaii is my mainland and will forever be my mainland. And America will be America.
Yes.
And therefore, I will speak in the language of my home and the language of my grandparents. And I will do everything that I can to empower that. And it's of little to no consequence to me. Dean can attest to this. We go back and forth on it in terms of, and we fight about it sometimes too, which is great because I learn from all those times that we do about whose perspective are we following and according to whose logic and according to, who's right, who's wrong, which right are we going to follow? And knowing my language has enabled me to learn in varying degrees Tongan and Samoan and even Tahitian language. So wherever I go in the Pacific, or at least in amongst the Polynesian dialect speaking islands, it's reminded me that Hawaii is a part of a larger family and that the work that we are doing must absolutely ring and sing Hawaii, but must also be felt, if at minimal, by the people of the Moana. Any Polynesian should be able to look at our film and say, I know what that means, or, oh, I understand that. And anyway, that's my answer to your question. I hope that, hope that fulfills what you're asking.
Yes, mahalo nui. That was wonderful. Thank you for that. I just also want to this research question.
Oh, that was Ciara. We wanted you to respond to that too, because you also, it looked like you had, I think Kiki just got cut off, but.
Should I go next?
Yeah, because it looked like you had like such a, and I was like, oh, I'd like to see like her
2 o'clock.
Yeah.
Could you, to clarify then, just themes of, sorry, I just wasn't sure.
Oh, the research process, what that was like. The research process.
Oh,
what was
you had? You looked like you were wanting to respond to.
Oh, because I love their film, and I love them. I love everything they do. I think they're like, I think their team, like, I think what Hina, Joe, and Dean are doing is opening up this, like, so much of the space and conversation about gender identity and choice. Like, I mean, I'm their biggest fan. I think like everything they're doing is opening up a conversation that needs to be had in Polynesia, and I think every Polynesian should be able to culturally identify with who they are in a culturally relevant way. So, and I see the impact of colonization affect my own family members, my cousins, their ability to feel like normalized, and I think the frustration between Western structure and Polynesian perspective. So, I'm just like, anyway. Sorry, I don't know if that was relevant, but asking about, but yeah, just like the opportunity to research, and like in the film we worked on, with This Is the Way We Rise, a lot of that backstory and like research to get people up to speed with the context of where things were at for Jamaica and making sure that people outside of Pacifica cultures understands, you know, the relevance of the movement and how it shaped Jamaica. You know, getting people to understand what the history is, because unless this is not, Mauna Kea is not a movement of just that moment, that summer or now. It is a long discourse and conversation about displacement of our people and the misuse of our land, you know, on many levels. And so this is I think what it is a tipping point moment for me. And so to be able to, a lot of the research we had to do was to really excavate, how do we explain this history in a very like compact way so that you get why this means so much to us, unless you know the loss, right? Like, and it's not just this moment loss, it's not just Mauna Kea, it's all the things before. Then you understand like what this reclamation of our community and why it gave or helped Jamaica to refine her voice as well. So
mahalo.
So we're good on time. So I'm gonna go ahead with the next question. So in Hinakura and Kama'aina, we see themes of female menstruation. We might even be able to draw parallels to Taui Puapunga and Tamoko. So could you all talk about the significance of blood or menstruation through an indigenous worldview in your films, or however you'd like to, what it might call or what was evoked in that process. So we'll start with Bex.
Yeah, so I mean, that was the thing that I really wanted to talk about in the film, was actually that it was such a celebration. And it always has been. And in Te Ao Māori and our Māori world, men and women were very equal. There's no, you know, everyone had their place in the world, but women could very much make up their mind about what it is that they wanted to do. Same with our men. And actually, when you're born, right from even when you're in the womb to when you're in your first few years of life, you could really see what spirit the child was. So based on what that spirit was, their whole kind of childhood play would be under the umbrella of whatever. So if they were a natural healer, they'd be taught play, but in the ngahere in the forest by learning different plants. So if you're going to be a warrior, you'll be taught how to be agile and read the environment and things like that. And so it was when the missionaries came off the back of the burning of the witches, where it became like your devil vagina and the bleeding and whatever your devil vagina is going to make me do, can't control myself. And it made our sacred cycles just, you know, dirty and evil. And, you know, now that we're in this day and age, we've just got so much dysfunction. And so much of that is because we're so far away from who we truly are. So when we got our bleed, that was the continuation of our whakapapa lines, our ancestral lines. That was, you know, peace within tribes through intermarriage. It was, you know, it was all of that. So for us, and also, you know, if you're going to go way, way, way back, when Maui tried to get immortality for men, he tried to do it by climbing into the vagina of Hine Nui Te, the goddess of death. And there's a little Piwai Waka, a fan tale that was thought it was so hilarious and ridiculous that Maui was doing this. He excitedly chatted and woke up Hine Nui Te, and she closed her legs and killed Maui, which actually was immortality for men, because that was the bleeding out of the vagina and the continuation of women being able to hold life within the womb. So we go way back when we're talking about menstrual blood. And I wanted to celebrate it and, you know, talk about that process.
Thank you. And we just have to say that, yes, thank you. I'm so glad we started the program with that. I was like, yes, I'm so glad we can even just say things like vagina in a panel. And Kiki and I were, you know, we loved that even the men that were, you know, how supportive their roles were in your film. It was great. There was a little typo. It's Kimmy. We're actually going to pass the question to next.
Yeah. You know, for me, I was really trying to examine, I guess, gender identity and sort of socioeconomic inequality. Like the lead character, I think, is a queer individual who's sort of grappling with gender identity. And, you know, I think menstruation was something that was fascinating to include. And then also You know, it really is sort of this like injustice that sanitary products are as expensive as they are, and especially for a houseless individual, it was something that I really wanted to use truly as a narrative device to be something that she's sort of baited with by that social worker, and something that she feels deep shame for that maybe she shouldn't. And you know, I think in a lot of my research, it was kind of astounding to me that the average woman is going to spend, or the average menstruating individual is going to spend over $5,000 in their lifetime on sanitary products, which are not free. And it's something that donation centers for houseless individuals are constantly looking for, you know, these products and then doling them out. So for me, you know, it really was a narrative device, but then also something that I think thematically fit throughout the film.
Thank you. Vea.
Sorry. Well, I guess obviously the blood in Tor's story represents a slightly different thing here, and I do remember when we were talking to the sister that she was saying that this blood, it doesn't have any smell, and it's unhumanly. But you know what, with this story with Tor, there's so much that I still don't understand, and so much that I still need to research and ask her about and find out about, that it's the way I try to formulate the film at the moment is to definitely not make any judgments. It's just to kind of this is what's happening, and it's really hard for me to talk further because I need to explore the whole subject so much more. It's something that I am really interested in because I'm trying to understand it. And at this point, I don't understand what's happening. And so that's something that's why I'm really passionate about making a feature about it, because me personally, I really need to explore it further because I've got so many questions. So yeah, I mean, at this point, that's really all I have to say about that. Yeah, it's kind of like a learning and process. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Mick.
Yeah, obviously Tamoko, when done traditionally, involved a lot more blood than it did that weekend, because the artist Rangi Kipa, he was using a more modern tattoo gun. But I personally, if I'm honest, my knowledge of kind of Māori symbolism, the symbolism of blood, tikanga, and the meaning behind these things is woefully small. So I don't feel very well armed to answer the question around the meaning of that in Tau Māori. I don't know whether either of the other two people who are from Aotearoa want to answer that, but yeah.
Well, that's okay. Oh, okay. The time has passed, sorry. And my screen blinked out. Okay. Oh, that's okay. But thank you for at least like giving that space. We appreciate it. Kiki, do you want to ask the next question? Sorry, I didn't prep you for the next question, but it is about the intimacy and of working and deeply with your subjects. I'll go ahead, Kiki. So we were just hoping that you could, Kiki.
Go ahead, finish what
Thank you.
finish.
Sorry, my bad, guys. But we're wondering if Elena, you could maybe speak to working with your subjects. We'll also pass this back to Bea and Mick. You touched on this a little earlier too, working with the documentary subject. But Elena, could you talk about working with your actors that's so intimately and deeply? And Alika, you'll get this question as well because you have repeat. I think your actors kind of come from your network, your social network. And I just wanted you to also speak to that and those relationships. But Elena, we'll pass it to you first. Anella, I'm so sorry.
Oh, sorry, I was like.
I'm so sorry, guys.
I guess I really enjoy working with the kids actually, because actually I don't think I've ever worked with an adult, but there's just something super genuine about everything they do and say. So a lot of the times I kind of just want them to go out and you know, just say what they do and say anyway. And it was great working with them because it is kind of like a heavy topic, especially when I was first reading the script to them, and I like went over it with them like in depth and like the meaning and what they're saying here, and seeing them kind of like understand that and like go into that place with their characters. It was really cool to see because they're so smart, and I love working with them because, you know, I don't want to coddle them just because they're young or anything like that. So I just like, you know, I tell them point blank, like, you know, this is how you feel right now and this is what you're saying, and like they get it, and like they bring their own thing to it, of course, because like they don't have these years and years and years of training as an adult performer. Like they just go out there and they do it, and they have no boundaries and nothing that holds them back, and like they take it super seriously, and like they have no ego. So like I love working with the kids because I don't know, there's just like a real genuineness there that I think is hard to come by sometimes, like once you, I guess, get past a certain age. So I think they brought a real realness to the story that, like, you know, I probably couldn't have brought out of someone else. Like they just brought it themselves. So yeah, I really enjoyed working with my actors. They were amazing. I love them so much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess for me, it's really important to build trust with your subject. And I think, you know, I think a lot of the time why people kind of tend to open up to me is because I'm really nosy, and I ask a lot of questions, and but I'm genuinely really interested in people's lives. I like to know how people live, and I like to know why, and I'm not afraid of asking questions. But I guess also it's really important to create like a safe space around it, and I always try and make sure that they don't have to answer the questions I'm asking. They don't have to speak about things they don't want to. And it's all really about making them feel comfortable. And I mean, a lot of the time, everyone actually does want to share, and they're quite appreciative to have that space created for them to share in their own way. So yeah, I think just having respect and asking them beforehand about what they're comfortable in sharing, I think is really important going into it, going into the situation. And also too, you know, it's a relationship that you build up over time. I mean, with Tor, even though we shot the initial interviews back in 2016, I've maintained a relationship with her, and we message like at least once a month or once every couple of months, and I'm a part of her life. I ask her about her children, and you know, like you actually have to invest in the person and in their story. And yeah, so that's how I kind of work with my people. I'm really nosy.
It's good to be nosy when you're making documentaries.
Yeah.
And what do you think, Mick?
What was the question, sorry?
Just about, you had touched on this earlier too, about working intimately with your subject. So it's like you set out to make this film, but then the relationship that built between you and your subject actually kind of shifted the film. So I was just gonna see if you could respond to that.
Yeah. Well, I guess I kind of come back to what I said at the beginning, where I was really aware that my role was very much a kind of a capturer, you know. So I was kind of a fly on the wall, and I didn't actually form kind of like a close relationship with Bernard and Sapphire. Although when we were interviewing them, obviously that's kind of quite an intimate setting.
So it's
Yeah,
very
I think in some ways sorry, what was that, Mickey?
I was going to say it's in contrast to Vea's process, you know, like they're in this relationship, but yours was kind of encapsulated.
We were kind of in for a weekend and then out. But in some ways there is still relationship there, in that they just the amount of respect that I gained for them and for what they were doing throughout that weekend. And I guess in some ways I still think of my relationship with them of one of admiration for the depth of their beliefs, the depth of their care for their community, and getting moko done was for both of them very much kind of them saying, I want to I believe in this community and I want to spend a significant portion of my life serving this community and building this community and allowing this community to heal. And that was hugely humbling for me, because I hadn't really, we don't kind of put our heart on the line as much in my culture. So I really admire that, and it definitely created a shift in me.
Thank you, Mick. We just wanted to give everybody a chance to respond the second time. Alika, I know you're still here, so that's why. Do you want to?
Yeah, unfortunately, this will be my exit question, because I have to go DJ at KTUH at 3, streaming around the world if you guys are interested. So with my actor situation, it's kind of unique because I live with the lead actor. He's my roommate, and this is our second collaboration together, and this is the second time he's ever acted. So he keeps getting better and better, and I'm hitching my wagon to him, and I'm riding him to the top. The kid, it was his first time acting as well, Austin Tucker, and he did an amazing job. And Danielle, the baby mother, was someone who I'd always admired and wanted to work with. And this was an opportunity to do so, because she had she had this 1.5-hour window between theater rehearsals that day. So she came and did her scene in 1.5 hours, and we didn't rehearse it, and she killed it. And I was she elevated everyone's performance, and I was so grateful to just bear witness to that. I think that's the thing. It's just when you're working with really talented people, you just kind of let them go. And when something's working, you just try not to get in the way. And so I've been fortunate enough to be around these really talented actors who, for the work that I'm trying to do, trying to create a verisimilitude, I want, it's almost better for it to be unpolished and unvarnished. So I think that authenticity rings true in their performances. And for Holden, the lead, he grew up closer to these stories than I did. So he was sort of, I think, channeling something innately that makes it really powerful to me. So I just have to get out of the way and let them do their thing. But Yeah, thanks for having me on this panel. It's been amazing. I wish I could stay longer. There's a million people I'd like to say hi to.
We're grateful for having you here. Do you want to quickly tell us any next projects you have coming up?
I mean, we're trying to adapt the short into a feature. So, you know, it's kind of, it's a little bit in flux right now given the current landscape, but that's what we're working towards. Yeah.
Thank you, Leah. Okay.
Thanks, guys.
I'd better take this chance to depart as well. I've got to hit the road, but so nice to see all you guys.
Thank you so much, Mick. And do you want to, yes. Would you like to, what's your next project? Quickly.
Oh, well, I tend to dabble in all sorts of strange things. To be honest, I'm making a podcast about mental health called Are You Mental? So it's not even a film. But yeah, we've just had Mental Health Awareness Week here in Aotearoa, so just been doing some publicity for that.
Great, we'll look out for it.
Yeah, do. All right.
Thank you, Meg.
See you later, guys.
Thank
Enjoy.
you.
Bye-bye.
And then Kumuhina is also talking about her next film. So if we can go in and talk about that.
Oh, you have to unmute yourself.
Sorry.
That's okay.
This particular film choice was actually brought up to me by Dean and Joe. And they thought what a neat idea it would be to shift the focus for a little bit, because we've now done a couple of films that have focused on the trans element. But when we look at sex, sexuality, and the larger understandings that are part of the greater context of being Kanaka, here in Hawaii, we have some very unique stories that focus upon the power of women, the power of men. We have stories that focus upon beings of dual nature. We have so many wonderful and interesting things that this story allows us to speak to Manawahine. And you know, I'm very curious to see how it will be received once we put it out there. But as I wrote to all of you, this is you know, the project that we are doing. And Dean, would you like to speak for a moment, because it was you and Joe who pitched the idea to me on this round?
This is the story of the place that many people know as Coco Head Crater, but is also Kohelepelepe. It is the story of Kapo Mai Lele, or Kapo's flying vagina. And it's a story about Pele and when she was attacked by the pig god Kamapua'a, and her sister, Kapo, had a way to help her. Needless to say, we're also doing this by animation. This is not a live action film, and we're very glad for a variety of reasons to be working on animation. I'll just also mention that with Kapaima Hu, beyond the film, there's going to be a documentary, and most important, an exhibition at the Bishop Museum, which will be in 2022. Hopefully we'll be done with the COVID by then. And really exciting because Hina's writing the whole exhibition in Ni'iau, Hawaiian. So this will be a kind of a unique opportunity to have a truly bilingual exhibition at the Bishop.
I'd like to say, thank you, Dean. You have segued me to cut you off and to say to all of you, those of you who possess the capacity to speak in the language of your islands, use it, put it forward, make it be your primary language of communication. Make the English language secondary in the film. In Samoa, there is no other place that Samoa will have, well, the Ngangang for Samoa will have its rightful place to exist. Tonga, lea whakatonga, kai te iaha whei tuui tu tonuai ai lea whakatonga. You know, the same goes for whatever language that we speak. We must empower our language because it empowers our train of thought. It empowers how we see the world. It informs, and it directs how we bring these stories forward. And it will inform the generations to come on things that they may never have access to unless we put it out there. So thank you, Dean, for saying that, because yes, everything that is going into not only this Kapai Mahu project, we're also doing the Kapo Ma'ilele project in Niihau as well. But also everything for the exhibition, for the museum, and everything will always reflect Hawaii as my mainland, my homeland, and it will be pro-Hawaiian first and foremost. So mahalo to my colleagues, Dean and Joe, for that wonderful idea. Mahalo.
Mahalo. That is exciting. I also think that
I had cookies, that's why.
share.
I offered if you guys wanted cookies.
Send it to California. Mahalo nui. I think this is a great time, Mickey, to mahalo out, and because a lot of our guests are leaving already.
Agreed. Unless there's anybody that would like to just shout out what next project that we should look forward to. Anybody? Okay, then we will close for tonight. So thank you so much for joining. Mahalo nui, Saina Ma'asi. I just think I'm so grateful. We're so grateful to have you here tonight. Don't forget the specific Cinewaves Shorts program will be viewable now if you haven't watched it yet. It's a pay what you can screening, so please tell everyone to come and watch.
Yes, and before we go into our goodbyes, our hui hos, there's an after party. Don't forget, we're thrilled to have our friend Roddy Aguero Ablao come through for a special edition of Tiningo Time, a concept launch with Pacifica Transmissions. It's a fun night of trivia with a Pacifica lens. Please hang out with your fellow filmmakers and LAAPFF staff. We're dropping a link in the chat right now. Click that link to go to the after party.
And if you enjoyed this conversation and the festival lineup, please consider donating to Visual Communications. Your support will help sustain our year-round operations and programming. So go to vcmedia.org for more information.
And hope to see you at another conversation. For the most recent updates on the festival, please visit festival.vcmedia.org or follow us on our social media accounts at VC Film Festival. Don't forget to tag us on hashtag LAAPFF 2020.
Cool. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Mahalo, Mickey and
Mahalo.
Kiki, for moderating.
Mahalo nui.
Mahalo to you all.
Mahalo.
Oh my gosh. So good.
We're
We're not worthy. We're not worthy.
Umahina, I also, are you still on? Yes. I just want to mahalo you for something that you said in 2017 at the Biennale workshop that you did with, oh gosh, I cannot think of names right now, but you were talking about putting indigeneity first before our sexual and gender identities. And that was really transformative and validating for me as someone who was always, when I was coming out, you know, tossing around all of these labels and trying to pick one. So mahalo, personally.
Mahalo, I remember.
And it is such an honor to have you here with us.
Mahalo. Thank you for having our film.
Absolutely.
Take care. Be safe.
You too. Take care, everyone.
Aloha.